This is our session on Neighbors No More, Urban Renewal Comparisons and Research Methods in Lowell and Lawrence. Our presenters here are Fabrienne Kelly, who graduated from with a bachelor's degree from UMass Lowell, and will be presenting on her honors college thesis on urban renewal in Lawrence in the Common Valley Concord Urban Renewal Project. Our next presenter will be Mehmet Ali, who works for the UMass Lowell Libraries in Program and Project Coordinator and wrote his dissertation on urban renewal in Lowell. Let's see. Anthony Sampras will be presenting, we'll be tying all the presentations together by discussing how the panelists conducted their research and how others might utilize a variety of unique archive resources to help tell the story of urban renewal. He is the archivist and metadata specialist, sorry, at UMass Lowell Libraries, where he specializes in congressional records and local history. And finally, Zachary Najarian Najayev is a senior history major at UMass Lowell, and his primary area of interest is in 20th century history, and he's planning to pursue studies in library science, and he will be presenting on the his interactive documentary website on Lowell's Little Canada before it was demolished. And those who attended the Lowell presentation in the first session saw some discussion on how that fit into the urban renewal projects in the city of Lowell. So we will begin with Fabrienne Kelly.
So my thesis started with something completely different, and then came up in a conversation with a teacher about this symposium, actually, that was to happen, and he gave me like a suggestion that it would be something interesting. When I had no idea about urban renewal, I came to I'm from Brazil, and I came to the United States in 2004. But when I looked at it, I was really interested to connect this work with a previous work that I've done for UMass Lowell in oral histories. And I found out that related to the urban renewal and the project that I selected, because I wanted to select the first project because I didn't know anything about urban renewal. They had a lot of oral histories related to it. And I really appreciate oral histories. And they give a feeling to whatever work I'm doing. If I go into the oral histories, they bring alive everything that I am researching. So I chose the first project. I went looking for the first one. So I wanted to know the politics behind it. In my research, I had to go all the way to the beginning. Who was the first person to think about urban renewal? And how is it possible that you just come to a neighborhood and just say that you're going to move and now we're going to redevelop this? It was not possible in my mind that this could happen, so I had to go really into the politics and from the beginning, how was it possible to be crafted by politicians that this be done? So this is the only aerial view that I found that has my neighborhood at the time, and it's a cover of the celebration of a director of urban redevelopment in Lawrence. And it doesn't show my whole neighborhood, but it's really helping me even to find, because I have several pictures of the whole neighborhood, building by building, that the library, the public library has. So it helps me to find each one and identify which structures are which and who lived in there. Um, so the neighborhood is bounded by, well, there is the church, which everybody told me, like when I was looking for it, look for the church. The church is the best, your point of location, the main point. And there were, maybe the next slide, because I put the information there. So the goal that was shared with the residents of this area when it was marked for renewal, the goals were to provide suitable housing for residents and rejuvenate the downtown shopping area. There was this idea behind that Lawrence needed to attract new businesses. So if you look in a little paper, that by the time my project was in 57, 58, that's when it started. But by 53, and I really like to use this to show that that's a newspaper clipping from 1953. There was already this idea that they needed to diversify. And to diversify, they need to attract new industries to Lawrence, and that would be the answer. With the diversification, you would make yourself attractive to industries, and they would want to move to Lawrence and bring Lawrence back to life, because at that time they talk a lot about Lawrence as it was in a decline, it was blighted, the downtown area was a slum. So that's what it was given as an explanation for urban renewal to the residents. And that's the reuse appraisal that I put on a flyer too. It says that there's a lot of talk about the blight, that the blight's spreading, and that's why the businesses are not coming. And we need to bring them. That's the problem. We need more tax revenue to bring Lawrence back to life. Next. So this is the map, because I don't have a whole map in the beginning. So this is the selected area, this is the common. Today, they don't have the two streets that were closed, and those are very, very, very busy streets at the time. Next one. This is the map that the Lawrence redevelopment authority had to check how fast the project was progressing, and when would they be ready to sell the property to redevelopers. So in this project, there is about, there's talk about being 32 acres to 34. There was 182 parcels of land, 758 dwelling units. A lot of the houses were divided into like as many as 6 rooms that everybody shared one bathroom, and 200 commercial units. So to accelerate this, in 1957, a lot of people were against. They knew that they would lose their business if redevelopment was coming. And it would happen exactly as Lawrence Redevelopment Authority was saying it would. The people that had their own houses divided and rented to residents downtown, they knew they would lose that. So they were very, very loud against. And there were public hearings in 1957 to open to the public, so the residents could voice their opinion and ask questions. So because of that, they really pushed for an order of eminent domain, which was issued in 1959. And now the whole neighborhood would be taken, and the project would be accelerated to be completed as fast as they could. So by the time redevelopment really started there in this neighborhood, a lot of people had been hearing about urban renewal. It was coming for a long time, and they were already moving out slowly. So by the time that the project really started, a lot of those properties were already empty, leaving 380 families and 160 businesses. There were 200 businesses, so 40 at least moved in a few years. So I did a lot of before and after pictures. You can go back and forth. So this is the corner. This is the house that was there. It was a funeral home, which I think it was beautiful. And that one. And now it's what is there. This is the corner of Bradford and Hampshire Street, and that's where the Sycamore village or complex is today. That's what it was there. Amazingly, when I went to take the pictures, I found out that the hotel is still there. The building for the hotel is there. And in the map, you can see that that building is number 11 on the corner. It's in the middle of the west side. And it's exempted from the, but because reading through this, you could see that a lot of buildings that were exempt, they actually were included later by force and by eminent domain. When eminent domain came, there was a lot of buildings that were included after. And this one was exempt, and it was a mystery to me why that happened, and I'm trying to find out why. Because on the description of the project, they actually say that this is it's supposed to be included. So I thought it would be gone. But I found out it's still there. It's in really bad shape. They're kind of doing something inside now. There's a bunch of trucks there, and they're emptying out. They put a slide on the side, and I don't know, something it will happen. But it was a hotel, and it was a really well-known hotel in this neighborhood. It was called the Commonwealth Hotel. This is St. George. It's close to the YMCA. It's still there. But this is a new building. There are houses here. You can go to the next one, actually. Oh, that's up close. These are all gone. And that's what it was there before. Here, all gone. The only thing standing there now is the church, which survived. It's amazingly how churches survive. This is another corner, and this is where Capitol Cleaning was, which was a very successful cleaning service store. And today is where the doctor's office is. So this was Valley Street. It was open. Today it's closed, and that's where Hafner gas station was. If you look on the map, that was the last. It's right here, the only one in white on this map. That was the last property to be vacant at the site, because they had trouble with big tanks under. And which they actually described that a lot of the other ones in the residential properties, they would be all abandoned. So they were all buried. This one was, I guess they had to remove it. And it would take a lot of money and a lot of work. So it was one of the last ones. Next one. So this is where Wendy's is today. And that's what it was. So that was Valley. This Valley ended right there. They cut it in the half of the block there. And that's what it was before. It was a very busy street full of businesses and very alive, part of the neighborhood, really. And today is a Wendy's. So this is Bradford Street and Hampshire, going that way. The description of this funeral home, it was amazing. This is one of the things that I really loved about when I found out the history of it. This home was built by the grandfather of the owner of the house at the time of redevelopment. And the home was built in 1870 something. And she said it was the pride of their family. It was part of their history. And really well built. So the person that was paid to appraise all these homes walked in this home and said that it was of excellent build. So boggles my mind. Why would that property be included? That was something that should have been preserved. And there are people mentioning in oral histories about how some of these houses on Bradford Streets, there were amazing houses, how they were actually taken apart like a puzzle because the material that went into them and the handicraft in them were amazing. So a lot of pieces of the houses were actually sold. Next one. And that's where it was before, looking down that street. So there are several buildings. This is one of the, no, next one. Yeah, that's Lowell. Yeah. This is one of the busiest streets that would cut. And all those houses in Lowell Street really seem like they were run down. And today, it's where the Sycamore Village, the site actually, so where those houses were is actually on a parking lot right here. Next one. This is where one of the biggest fish markets was. And it's right across from, in front of the door almost of the church. So I tried to take this picture to make it go back in time and see where exactly it was. So it was right at that corner. There was a street that would go across here. Would go from there.
This thing is on autoplay. So
I know. So this one would come actually right here. And the church got all this property for a parking lot. So this neighborhood right here, it's all gone and it's a parking lot for the church today. I parked my car there and I'm like, I can't believe there are 12 properties, 12 homes right here where I am standing right now. And there's a little convenience store right there, Frank's property variety store. And they're saying like, that one should have been gone. There's 2 old people that live there. The oral histories are amazing to hear these things. People say like, they should not be there. So let's just wipe it out. You can stop actually. There. Thank you.
and my title, although this rendered perfectly somewhere else, but not here. But anyways, you can understand what we're doing here. Go ahead. So Lowell, as you may know, is one of the first planned industrial cities in the country, and was set up with essentially kind of planning aesthetics in mind. And much of the design of the city was created, and here we have the canal systems. They were laid out first, and then of course the streets and the housing, and then came the commercial districts and subsequent housing after that. But the physical design of the bend in the river, and then the original canal system, followed by the follow-on canal systems, essentially laid out the city. And so the first person involved in creating all of this was Kirk Boot, who I consider Lowell's first master planner. He had essential authority to work on the design of laying out the city, to the point where they didn't realize that maybe they needed some of the laborers that would eventually come to town, but then did lay out a parcel called the Acre, which became kind of the Plymouth Rock for Lowell, where many of the first immigrants came. So fast forward about 130 years, and we have Lowell with all of its complexities and all of its kind of natural and artificial boundaries created, especially from the waterways, coupled with massive deindustrialization, which began essentially 100 years after the founding of the town, to the point where we have a very mixed-use environment for the city, with residential, commercial, industrial, recreational, all kind of swarming in very tight spaces. With deindustrialization starting in the 1920s, Lowell began to feel the brunt of this on its physical landscape. So Lowell's economic system actually started to crumble even before the great October crash in 1929. Good. So in 1954, the city established its first kind of modern planning department. And in February of 55, the city's first city planner, Charlie Zedek, was hired by the city manager, Frank Barrett, who was in office for 8 years and had a long tenure and was really the overseer of a lot of the urban renewal efforts. So a little bit of background about Charlie. He was born in Dwight, Kansas, kind of the center of America. Grew up on the West Coast, but then moved to the East Coast, where he attended Harvard. He dropped his studies to join the war effort during World War II, and he joined the Army Air Corps, where he was a captain leading bombing missions over Germany from England. I'd like to read a quote of his that he talked about his war experience. He says, "Germany was a beautiful-looking place, like a soft map. I began analyzing cities, sections of cities," as he was looking out the bombardier's window. "I was sitting in a classroom 5 miles up. Frankfurt was a star-shaped. Other cities were triangles. It was a wonderful chance to look down on these patterns. Then the idea for city planning hit me like a ton of bricks. Observing the cities, the pattern began to work itself out. The idea was that you could lay on one city on top of another, a new one that would be planned." So I think it's very interesting that Charlie Zedek kind of got his creation, his ideas for urban renewal as he was destroying German cities below. Go ahead, thanks. So with that, and let me read another great quote from Charlie. And I had the opportunity to go interview Charlie. He's since deceased. He was living in Hopkinton. He turned out to be a very wonderful friend, even though I essentially opposed many of the things that he believed in. And he even, in my last kind of discussions with him, kind of admitted, if you want, or came to a new understanding of what his role had been, and he really cherished a lot of the historic preservation efforts that had followed on from his tenure in the 50s and 60s. So here's an interview that was in the Saturday Evening Post with Charlie. "While I was in the process of contributing my share of destruction to German cities, there was born in my thinking a plan to rebuild them. It is my own peculiar belief that many of the world's woes can be traced directly to what is found inside city limits, or rather, what is not found therein. I imply that design, motion, organization, education can reach a state of near perfection if the pattern is correct. and that the city can be a maker of good men. So a very idealistic identity for Charlie Zedek and many of the planners and the folks that came to power in this post-war period. Just backing up, I just want to show, so here's a map of the city of Lowell, and so the urban renewal areas, there were several urban renewal areas. There was the Church Street area, which was the first commercial urban renewal project in the country to be completed. Then the famous Northern Canal project, which is highlighted in green, which included the neighborhood of Little Canada that we'll see some more of in a few minutes. Hale Howard. Earlier was a housing project that wiped out the Greek community. So Lowell, for its size, was very active, very energetic, and very successful at gaining those federal funds that were available at the time. In many ways, the planners of the time cannot be faulted for their decisions because the funding that was coming out of the federal government at that time was for demolition, not for things like preservation. It was only because of community involvement and changes in ideas that federal funding went towards preservation, and places like Lowell and Lawrence have exemplified that. Go ahead, thanks. Here we have the, and I'm sorry the image, I couldn't find a high-res scan of this. This image essentially shows the main spine along the urban renewal corridor. So starting with the Lowell Connector, which would come in and do a big loop through the inner city and then get back out onto the interstate highway system with routes 3 and 495. Along the way, you would have industrial parks, you'd have giant parking areas, you'd have the urban renewal zones, you'd have public housing, all of this massive amount of government intervention to remake the landscape. Go ahead, thanks. So, and this is a map of the Northern Canal area, specifically around Little Canada. I want to talk about some of the planners' tools. And we have a couple planners here in the room, and I'm sure they're still using these tools because they are good ones to make your kind of arguments and help you succeed in your endeavors. Before I go into the tools, I'm sorry, just want to kind of talk about the idea of planning, especially in this early period, 1950s, 1960s. There was very little public accountability. The city planner worked directly for the city manager, not for the city council. It was appointed a position, not elected, etc. So, and planners even realized that they were distant from the kind of public that they were serving. Zedek talked about his role being non-political, and he labored to give the impression that everything I was doing was not political but professional. The notion of an apolitical planner became widely accepted in the public eye. He talks about the conflict between planners and peoples arises because the former, to merit their title of planners as opposed to politicians, base their decisions on long-range use and benefit studies, not upon, quote, the short-range whims of voters. Some of the tools that Charlie Zedek and I'm sure other planners used during this period was language. And in many writings, Charlie Zedek wrote about the city in kind of corporeal terms, in terms of body and human bodies. It was describing Lowell as old, weak, or feminine, in contrast with urban renewal, which was deemed young, strong, and energetic. Lowell suffered from congestion and blight, and downtown ills, and the city was dying. Feminized Lowell needed planning to feel secure from decay and decline and should be made attractive. Urban renewal was regarded, quote, by many as the only program that can pump new life into the hearts of old cities, as well as helping to rejuvenate it. Lowell's Connector was the city's central artery, or, quote, the spinal cord of Lowell's renewal, et cetera, et cetera. What are some other tools that planners used? One of the areas that they used were maps, right? So besides maps, they used aerial photography, models, artistic renderings, and zoning. These were the tools to help kind of make their arguments for the general public. Maps were instrumental in providing legitimacy to the planners' designs as they were attached to ordinances, acquired an aureole of science, and helped to create an ethic and virtue of ever more precise definition. To planners, a map was a reflection of what the community wanted to have happen. Planning maps became fixed, unalterable entities to which the community was bound and developed into irrefutable reference points in which planning discussions were framed. Maps were also kind of intended to desocialize the space, right? Instead of looking at kind of streetscapes with bodies and vehicles and children and stores, maps could just desensitize us, desensitize the planners and the public to what was going to come through urban renewal. Here's the Church Street project, you know, kind of dots or numbers on the map, right? Go ahead. Here we have these aerial images with planning overlays. Here you see the downtown Lowell Connector extension coming through the South End neighborhood and kind of flushing out onto the Church Street project. If you looked at that map before, you saw all the different properties. Now only just a few remain, or a few remain, and then new structures in its place with lots of public parking, as always. Also connecting to other public parking lots. This was the home of the, I always forget the mills. These are the mills on Warren Street. The Middlesex Mills, thanks. The city seal is based off of these mills. All torn down for the Smith parking lot. This is where the hotel, the ICC, the University Inn and Conference Center, is built today. Tony? Here we have city planners. I was fortunate to interview many times Jack Tavares. I don't know if, I think you maybe knew him, Chuck. And Adam, did you have a chance to meet him? Yeah. And here's with the master model. Here's the future of Lowell. The other guy, if you go back, Tony, the other way. The other way, yeah. One more. Nope, going the wrong way. The other way, Tony. Giving away all my state secrets here. That thing is not easy to maneuver there. I interviewed this gentleman too. His name escapes me, but his father was a police chief. And then we never figured out. We think this was actually, Jack Tavares didn't know who it was. We think it was a guest coming in from another city as a planner. But so now you see the master model. And there we go. And this is, again, showing the giant swaths of parking that would be available, the new industry. We even have a heliport over here or something. I mean, this is Lowell's future. Yeah. Never was able to connect with this gentleman, William Bing Sing Leong. He was city planner in Lowell in the mid-'60s, and he was the designer of our famous and well-hated JFK Plaza. What else about the planners? Some of the other tools that they talked about, like they might use these creative renditions. I talked to one planner. These are, artistic renderings of what the future was going to hold. Here's one of the planners talking about his artwork. I could do one hell of a rendering. The city manager used to call me over. Hey, I got somebody in here. You know that site over there? Put a 10,000 square foot building on it. Do a site plan for me. So I'd lay out a building with parking and trees and landscaping, and all of a sudden, he'd stand before the city council or a subcommittee with this three-dimensional color rendering of the proposal. Of course, everybody thought it was the greatest thing to come along because they could see it. It looked pretty. I could make a dump look good. Zoning was another major tool for planners to carry out their dreams. Zoning was considered by City Hall as a legislative way of controlling land use so that people can protect their investments over time. That is, investments unless they were being ripped down. Zoning was used to promote the health, safety, convenience, morals, and general welfare of Lowell, and to encourage the most appropriate land through the city. Zoning reflected a heightened control over the built environment. One of the terms that came in popular use was non-conforming use, the idea that you could not have residential in the same area as industrial or commercial. Now we know brilliant planners like the folks sitting here have realized that residential mixed in with commercial is a great thing, right? Because it means people adjacent to the places of work. So the language of planners took on kind of warlike ways, and we're going to see a couple brief slides. The befores, this is in the Church Street project area, Chinese laundryman. Yes, yeah, this is the post office on Appleton Street, 89 Appleton Street in the shadow there. This photographer just passed away a few weeks ago, George of Lowell's, good friend of ours. Here's Little Canada, and Zach, again, will talk some more about that. Here's what happens between the time that a place is determined to be a zone of urban renewal, but before all the properties are taken. You have arson, you have neglect, you have people moving out, you have vacancies. And here's the actual demolition. What a great way to spend a Saturday afternoon with the kids, seeing your home demolished. And here's Twilight over Little Canada. So salute to progress. Urban renewal discussed in terms of the future, in terms of betterment, in terms of progress. And here's what you get. You get Saugus at the Church Street Plaza. Okay, thank you very much, and we're hoping to have some questions afterwards. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about the record that survives, or the record that you're trying to find when you're doing your research, your dissertation, your thesis, or your expose on how all this urban renewal happened. Just to get you started, we have two wonderful repositories. We've got the Center for Lowell in part of the UMass Lowell. We've got the Lawrence History Center. And these are great resources for what they have in terms of microfilm, records, narratives, books. But when you're looking for the records that have to do with city planning, you're not necessarily going to find them there. You're going to have to do some footwork, which is exactly what Ali did during all his years of working on his dissertation. So where would you look? The common sense says if these were city planning records, you go to City Hall and find all the records there. And as it turns out, the Massachusetts Code for retaining records says that you're supposed to retain city planning records forever. That's something you never throw out. But when you go to City Hall and try to find it, you might find a piece of it, you might find a part of it, but you're not going to find like this full set, like some metaphysical, version of what happened. It's not waiting for you. So to really, to get going on it, your best place to find a narrative is in the newspapers, and especially if you can find one of the planners or say a mayor who I think we go to the next slide now. Yeah, we have the mayor of Lawrence, Mayor Buckley, right? He did a lot of your work for you because he kept a scrapbook of his career, and of course he's going to want to immortalize himself. So you've got the exact things you want pulled out, and this was found at the center at the Lawrence History Center, right? Yeah. So this is like a perfect. It's a perfect primary secondary source because it's already edited for you. So this is pay dirt. As far as newspapers go, Ali and I, we trained on microfilm, and you learn how to like zip through and fast forward. But if you don't have the dates in microfilm, it can be a needle in a haystack. Now we have some great resources. One is called the Access Newspaper Database. Just about, I think every public library in Massachusetts has it as part of their suite of databases. The state pays for it. And it's Googleable, so you can do some keyword searches on it and pull up articles. But character recognition isn't that great, and I'm afraid that at some point, Massachusetts will say we don't want to pay for this, and it's like written on the wind. And when that happens, we always have the microfilm to go back to. It's solid. There is also another source that you would want to look for, and that is it's called the Massachusetts Newsstand. UMass Lowell used to have it. Massachusetts Newsstand picks up some of the smaller publications, like Chumps for the smaller towns. If you're trying to find, the newspapers for a small town, it might not exist on microfilm or anywhere. It might the newspapers that publish them might not even have them. So it's really it's a scavenger hunt. So let me see, where are we? So let's go to the next slide, and then maybe that'll remind me. So another place to look is where other people have worked, and this isn't cheating really, but you can look at other people's dissertations, and you're not so much looking at, you want to see what story they're trying to tell so that you're not replicating the same work. And you can get a lot of that in the abstract without reading the whole dissertation. You can get a pretty good idea. The abstracts aren't perfect, but they give you a general idea. The real pay dirt of the dissertations is to look at the citations, to look where they were looking, and then see if some of those citations might be an obscure archive. People, records wind up in crazy places. Like Ernest Hemingway, you think of him as a literary figure. His archive is at the Kennedy Library. For some reason, one of his heirs was having dinner with one of the Kennedys, and I would like Papa Hemingway's. Yeah, okay, and it winds up over there. So you could find Lowell records in another town, so difficult to find all the planning records at City Hall. The best place to find them, and I learned it from Ali, is that you find the people that, who are the people? Who are the people involved? Obviously not LBJ, we're not going to find him, but we're going to find some of these people, we're going to track them down. And as it turns out, you've heard the old expression, don't take work home. Well, these guys took work home because they have some of the best records, the most comprehensive. It's home. Maybe it's in their attic because it was their work, and they're the big guys, and they can do what they want with their records. They just brought them home. Next slide. All right. So oral histories, they bring color to your story. You'll find that there are oral histories that already exist, and then you're going to be perhaps making oral histories as you do your dissertation or thesis. And there's a whole protocol on how to do oral histories, what to say, what not to say, make sure your batteries are charged, all that stuff. But what it comes down to with oral histories is to be a human, be a humanitarian. And there gets to, with something as egregious as urban renewal, there's going to be once you get to interview someone, there's going to be some unburdening that they might want to do, or telling their side of it. The basic human nature is you're always going to aggrandize the things that, if something went well, you're going to to amplify your part in it. If something went badly, you're going to minimize your role in it. I think it's a little different with urban renewal because there's so much controversy that they might want to. You might talk to someone who wants to set the record straight. So next slide. You have to work like a detective, and if you're going to take on a project like this, your passion is going to drive you, your curiosity, your obsession is going to drive you, and that kind of motivation is going to be the thing that gets you to make that extra phone call or try to pin down that next interview. And that's when moments like the one I'm about to recount to you secondhand that Ali experienced, in that he had just finished a long oral history, and he's trying to get at this urban renewal thing in Lowell, and the interview had pretty much wound down, and he says to the person he's interviewing, Jim Silk, "Do you have anything else for me?" And the guy waits, and he says, "Okay, here, let me check something." And he goes to the attic pull-down ladder and pulls down the attic ladder and goes up and pulls down a document. And he gives it to Ali here, who looks it over and sees that it's a deep critique of all the things going on at City Hall having to do with urban planning. It doesn't have an author on it. And Silk says, "This is top secret. You can't share you don't know, you didn't get it from me, whatever." And with a little more cajoling, Ali received the confession of who it was. It was Father Gagnon. And this is the kind of sort of persevering and going after and keeping at it that you have to do if you're going to work on a project like this. And we got a next slide here. This is an example of being a detective. This is from Fabi's work. You would think that all of the photographs of the building stock that were taken for the planning of urban renewal, you'd think those would be all nice and packed up at City Hall waiting for you to look at. Mm-hmm. They're not. For some reason, they're over at the Lawrence Public Library out of a kind of natural selection in that somebody found them. We don't know the story on we don't know what the provenance is of how they got there, but someone saw them. They saw they were important, and they know that the library is a place where things are taken care of, and they took it to the library, and thank goodness they did, because there's another one. These are just great shots of the neighborhood. Is there one more? In a box, waiting for you to use it. And one more. Yeah? Just one more slide? Okay. So a few other oddball places, you're going to look wherever you can find things. I've found things on eBay that help my research, embedded in the text of a Google book. And there's a great resource called the Internet Archive, where people, institutions, historical societies are uploading their stuff in there. It's this vast resource. You never know what you can find.
Through Bob Foran's class this semester, Zach has been a student there and been working on the urban renewal story. And we thought it would be great to have not only kind of paper done, but an actual website that could be used for other researchers or community people that kind of wish to in a nostalgic way look back on their neighborhood. And so Zach pioneered this website focusing on the Little Canada neighborhood. The Little Canada neighborhood, as I discussed before, is part of the North Canal project. And so Zach took a lot of the stuff that I had gathered, plus other materials, and packaged them all under one roof. So here's the home page, and since we love kind of symbolicness, Zach came up with the idea. He found Paul Marion's poem about Little Canada called New Pine Hill. And so we added that on there. Beautiful poem. So just to set the tone of that. You can see the website on the homepage has this kind of auto carousel feature, which shows you some of the images.
And I did it so it's before, during, and after.
You want to go through the site now?
Yeah, so all of the documents pertaining to the urban renewal of Middle Canada are available here. Most of them are, this one is a list of, I took it from a whole booklet of comparable sales information and just picked out the ones related to Little Canada. And so there's maybe about 5 records here with pictures of the properties that were demolished.
Like those appraisals?
Yeah,
Like mini appraisals.
the annual redevelopment authority reports are also available, and also the complete text of the final project report for the entire northern canal zone.
Pull that one open, Zach. I think this is a really good example of the kind of beauty of scanning. It's going to take a minute here.
Yeah.
So, can you go to a different, can you show, go
Yeah.
back to the main site?
No, a smaller one too. What did you want?
Oh, no, just go, why don't you show the inventory page? Talk about this there.
Yes. And so all of the documents on here are listed in the inventory. So by title, creator, and more detailed descriptions that are available on the pages, also file format and the type of media it is.
So these are for the individual properties?
No, these are for the files that are on the site, like the documents and the photographs and the maps. See how this is coming along, loading. That's it, about halfway. So we also have the maps on here too. Some of them were the ones in Ali's presentation. And also, some of them are from the atlas, the city atlases. So this is from the 1880s.
So these maps show you the progression of the neighborhood as it gets developed over time. And then with the final maps from the planning documents showing kind of the parcels ready for demolition.
So then we also have photographs too, and I've divided it into 3 sections before demolition. So they're thumbnails here, and then you can open up larger photographs. And this is the
This is the Club Citoyen Américain, the
Citizens Club.
Canadian Citizens Club. French-Canadian, obviously Little Canada, predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly French-Canadian. I'll just show a couple other pictures there.
This is the corner of Aiken Street and Cheever Street, and there's a sign for a candy shop around the corner there. And we also have, in addition to these, we've got the demolition pictures too, some of them, which we've seen already. These are,
Why don't you open up a couple there?
this one's pretty cool. It's after everything was torn down, they took all the debris and burned it. And there's also a really cool one here, that, this one here.
I didn't know they could just burn.
They assembled a lot of the materials together and then they burned all the debris. These images here came again from somebody that worked at City Hall, that worked for the Redevelopment Authority. The photographer that I was talking about earlier that recently passed away, his studio was kind of a meeting place for the community. I used to go hang out there when I was delivering mail. One day somebody walks in with a box of color slides of the demolition of Little Canada, said, "Hey, do you guys want these? Because I was going to throw them out."
This one here is one of my favorite of the photographs.
I could be Vietnam.
Oh, this is finally almost done.
And just show one more picture.
Yeah, and then we also have pictures from during the urban planning, a lot of these.
Some of these I showed in my presentation already. Right?
This one here is the groundbreaking for what's now UMass Lowell's East Campus.
So these resources were in different places, many of them not in digital format, so Zach pulled everything under one roof and digitized it, organized it, and presented the story of Little Canada accordingly. To Tony's talk, I just want to say, like, one of the things that really helped me in my research, and probably Fabi as well, is getting these photos and then figuring out who they are, and then being able to either talk to them or talk to their spouse if they were deceased, or even their children. And I did get quite a bit of information from relatives of the individuals who had already passed.
And then this is the big. Yeah, it shouldn't, if you go on here at home, it shouldn't load this slowly. It's connected to my, yeah. Whole initial thing of the photographs. And I also have a page for the narrative as well, just describing the history of Little Canada and its demolition. Here we go. This is the complete text of the final project report, and it has almost all of the information available about the project from its inception up to right when it was about to be carried out.
How many pages is this document?
265 pages.
All now kind of searchable, findable, etc.
These are all character recognized.
Yeah, they're text searchable.
So you created like the library or archive of last resort for Little Canada.
Yes.
It's been destroyed.
It lives on here. And we also, the videos are on the flash drive.
Yeah, I'll get those. So another kind of fortuitous thing was, as I was mentioning this project to one of our staff members at the library, she said, "Oh, Little Canada, my father took home movies of the demolition one day." And I said, "Oh, really?" And yeah, we still have them. And so, of course, I cajoled her to bring it in, and we were able to, sure. We're able to digitize them and then get them up on the website. We won't go to the website because it takes too long, but I'll just show you a few of these. We won't watch all of them, and then we'll wrap up. So obviously the quality is good movies, but it has kind of an authentic